Hugh Hewitt, welcome to Friday edition. It's my favorite day of the week, obviously, as it is for most people, but especially because during this week, this program, we do a weekend review, and then I'm off to do special report tonight, so tune in with Brett Baer. I think maybe Shannon's in for Brett tonight at 6 p.m. over at Fox News. I begin, as I do on most Fridays when we're lucky, with John Ellis, editor-in-chief of News Items, the one newsletter that really does away with the need for all of them other ones that do the news. John, let's start with AI today because you've been covering it extensively in News Items, and now there's a backlash, and I'm kind of happy that there's a backlash. Tell us about it.
Well, there's a group called the Future of Life, which put out a statement this week calling for the prevention of superintelligence. Superintelligence being the point where AI intelligence exceeds that of human intelligence. And, you know, it was signed by religious leaders and politicians and financial people and others. But what was most interesting to me was the two people who signed it. One was Jeff Hinton, who is known as the godfather of AI, Nobel Prize-winning computer scientist, and a truly remarkable man in many ways. And the other person who signed it, to my surprise, was Steve Bannon, who is obviously known to your listeners, an advisor to President Trump and the host of the War Room, I think they call it. And when I saw Steve's name there, I thought, I've been sort of thinking about with the technology racing so far ahead of us normal human beings, would there be a backlash? And it struck me that Steve being part of this letter was an indication that a backlash was beginning to come together. And I think not only in the sphere of AI, but I think maybe especially so in the sphere of genetic modification. We're seeing embryos modified by scientists today. And I think the combination of AI running ahead of us and genetic modification running ahead of us is going to create a political backlash. I don't think we'll see it in the midterms, but I'm almost certain it'll be a major issue in the presidential campaign in 2028.
You know, John, I don't know Steve Bannon except for a brief phone call 8 years ago and a meeting 15 years ago that lasted about 2 minutes. And so I think, though, I'm guessing, I think he's pretty traditional Catholic. And if so, we'll mirror the positions of people like Ryan Anderson and Ed Whalen and others over at the Ethics and Public Policy Center who are very concerned, as I am, about embryo manipulation via the genome and AI. But I'm wondering, you can have a gazillion people sign a letter, and if none of them have regulatory authority, it doesn't mean anything. The EU is the only one trying to it's kind of a reverse tragedy of the commons. Everyone is not using the same stuff. Everyone's going in their own direction. And no matter what the letter says, China's going to go fast, so we have to go faster, don't we?
Well, the answer to everything, if you're in the AI business, is China, right? So somebody says this is getting ahead of us, and you know we should regulate it, and so on and so forth. And the answer always coming back is, if we don't do it first, China will do it first. Therefore, we have to do it first. And it's the Trump card, essentially, not Donald Trump card, but the Trump card in this argument. And I'm not sure how you get around it, because indeed the Chinese will. If they can, get there first. And if they get there first in AI, and especially if they get there first in quantum computing, then, you know, then our national security is at enormous risk. They could break any code, et cetera.
Is it possible in your reading, and again, News Items covers AI better than anything, and if you're an investor in this space, you really need to read News Items. But is there any way to separate out the human biology experimentation from everything else that AI is doing? For example, hypersonic missile targeting, intelligence penetration, surveillance technique, because that stuff is what China is interested in. I don't know that, can we do that? Can we separate out the biology like George W. Bush did at the beginning of his term having to do with embryonic stem cells? Had a big panel. They came up with conclusions that got overtaken by 9/11.
because there's a very strong and 50-year-old right to life movement, and because it's extremely well organized, well funded, knows how to play the political field, if you will, in state legislatures and in Congress. If that movement focuses on genetic modification of human beings, then I think they will have success passing legislation, et cetera. If they get to genetic modification of anything, they're not going to have success because, for instance, the agriculture industry,
Right.
the big ag is not going to say you can't do genetically modified foods. And in fact, you do need genetically modified foods to feed a global population of 8 billion people.
Yeah, there's a guy up in Minnesota, Iowa claims him, Norman Borlaug, who did genetically modified seeds. It feeds the world, so we're in favor of that. But human beings, not so much. Let's talk now about essential tremor is a progressive neurological disorder, and it's associated with Parkinson's, but not exclusively so. What's the breakthrough here?
So I interviewed we just started this one-on-one podcast at News Items, and the first person I interviewed, which I'll post tomorrow, is a woman named Jane Metcalf, who's the founder of Wired Magazine. She's done all of this stuff on the neo-biological revolution, and she's on the board of the foundation of the Focused Ultrasound Group. And she tells a story of a woman who was a nurse, and she suffered essential tremor, so she couldn't, hold a glass without spilling the water. She couldn't obviously do an injection because she'd stab somebody in the wrong place, and it was ruining her life. And this ultrasound technology. I mean, you and I think about ultrasound technology as a woman is pregnant and they put the gel on her tummy, and they look around. You can see on the screen the baby, but focused ultrasound combined with the most advanced MRI can find the exact place in the brain where the where the circuit isn't working, and thus the woman has essential tremor, right? And this has been done, and there's no, you don't have to open up anybody's head or anything. You find the MRI locates the precise point where the circuit is not switching correctly, and the focused ultrasound goes in there without hurting any of the tissue around it. And that woman left the hospital that day and didn't have the shakes.
Now, have they repeated that? Are they able to reproduce the same effect? Okay.
I was stunned. I mean, I had read there was one item in News Items like 3 months ago that said, focused ultrasound did something, and I put it in there because it sounded sort of interesting. But then I talked to Jane about it. She's on the board, obviously knowledgeable about what they're doing, and I'm going to interview the guy who's, probably in 2 weeks, I'm going to interview the guy who is the head of it, Focused Ultrasound Foundation. And so I'll know more then. But it is they're in 185 locations all around the United States, which I was
my goodness,
to me.
People are gonna rush to that. People with tremors are gonna rush to that. Well,
there's one thing which is, this is early stage, right? I mean, this is not something that if you have Parkinson's, you go in and you're fixed. That's not where it's at. But it has enormous promise, and as I say, we're going to interview.
I'm sure ears perked up all over the driving community. I want to make sure we mention. I invest in Palantir. It's the only stock I own, individual aside from mutual funds. And I read already this week in News Items, the biggest danger to some of the AI stocks is radical innovation within the sector itself. So I immediately thought, how big of a danger for Palantir? And I have to figure that out. I'm not looking for investment advice, but how is that the buzz among the AI stocks, is that they're going to outthink each other into oblivion?
Well, so we read every day that the AI stocks are, they account for whatever 70 or 50% of the gain in the Nasdaq, and the PE ratios are insane, and et cetera, et cetera. It's got to be a bubble. It's got to be a bubble, and to some degree, obviously, it is. But it's not like Google or OpenAI or Meta are going to collapse, and somebody is going to come in with a different way to build the chip that uses a lot less energy, that's a lot faster, and that we don't know what innovation is out there that's going to change sort of change the playing field, but there is one coming, and therefore it's not so much a bubble that you have to worry about if you're Meta. It's the innovation out of nowhere that may upset.
It's a silver bullet being fired from far away that you don't know is en route. John Ellis from News Items, always a pleasure. Go and look at News Items. You can find it on Google, John Ellis News Items, and they'll take you there. You'll be smarter. I'll be right back.